Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ MV Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
That's right.
Secretary Miguel Cardona. Welcome, brother.
Thank you. Glad to be here, man.
I know it's serious when I seen the Secret Service up in here this morning.
Yeah, this is the Secretary of Education of the United States of America, of course.
That's right. So for people that don't know, what is your job? What do you do?
It's all right. Secretary of Education. I oversee education across the country, pre-K-12, higher education, making sure students across the country, regardless of race or place, have access to high-quality education. That's the role.
What can you do and what can't you do?
Well, everybody talks about it being a bully pulpit, but we provide grants, funds. We push for policy. We do not oversee curriculum. We do not mandate curriculum, which is something that's been in the topic lately.
Y'all need to.
Yeah,
we need to change curriculum.
But, it's like, so we use our position to really push for equity in education, to make sure that the grants that go out are promoting those values that we know, promote a good education across the country, provide access to college. Loans, student loans are a big part of what we do. So there's a lot we can do to really move the needle in our country.
Will it ever get to changing the curriculum? Because you look at, what you learned as a child,
right.
What we learned as a child is definitely not needed now. And there's a lot of things that are needed, whether it's
right.
tech, whether it's real estate, whether it's, a building, architecture, whatever it may be. Right. A lot of times we didn't necessarily need that when we were in school, but these kids need that.
We must evolve.
We're not.
We must evolve in our education system.
I'm just saying we're not.
But you're right, and that's why I'm really excited, humbled to be in this position as an educator. I was an educator for over 20 years. I was a fourth grade teacher, a principal. We need to evolve to give our students an opportunity to not only succeed, but we need to lead the world again, man. We need to lead the world, and yes, it's at our fingertips. And I'm really confident that we can move the needle with that. I feel like there's more funds in education than ever before. And there's a level of urgency. I think we're the closest to hitting the reset button in education than ever before.
Really?
Yeah, really.
Why do you think that?
Think about it. Everything was disrupted 18 months ago. Everything that we knew to be normal.
Fix his mic.
Everything that we knew to be normal
Perfect.
changed. We were learning from home. So now as we come back, it can't go back to what it was or we're going to get the same results. And let me tell you, before the pandemic, race and place determined how kids succeeded in many places. And we can do better. We have more funds. There's urgency. There's policy behind it. I really do feel confident that our best days in education are ahead of us.
I do agree with you that things will never be the same, but I don't know what the plan is moving forward to change them. So you say we can't go back, but once you turn the page, what's there?
What's there?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you some specific things that I want to see as we move forward. And this is when you say, what do you do? This is what I'm talking about. If we don't restructure our schools to provide better social and emotional support for our students, better access for mental health supports,
I agree.
we're missing the point. I was in Michigan. I went into a high school where this year, 6,000 students on 3 campuses. The superintendent, the principal there said, we can't go back to how it was. These kids have suffered trauma. Every child in that 6,000 student high school has one period of social and emotional well-being support or access to mental health supports. That's real change, all right? I want to see our high schools evolve. I use the word evolve a lot. I want our high schools to evolve quicker. We have career pathways that are not being filled. We have high-skilled jobs, high-paying jobs, and our schools are not preparing our students for that. So we need to do a better job connecting our high schools with our community colleges, with our workforce partners. This infrastructure bill right now is going to create great jobs, high-paying jobs. We need our students to be prepared for that with the option to go to college, too. It's not either or. So that's what I mean. Those are the real changes that I want to see in the next few years.
I was going to ask, we look at public schools across the country, right? And a lot of times taxes and property values are based on schools, right? And how good the schools are, the school district is. How do we change that? Like, how come, in, I'll say, a wealthy neighborhood, usually the schools are a lot better, even though that they're public. But then if you go to a neighborhood that might not have as much funds, that school might not be on that top list. The education and the learning might not be as good as the wealthier neighborhood. Why is that, and how do we change that?
Right. States control funding formulas, but we know policy is a huge lever for equity. So we're bringing attention to that. We have a policy, maintenance of equity, which is changing the game a little bit, right? And it's really making folks look at how you're funding schools. You're right. I mean, when people they're born into a community, the taxes or the how they fund their schools is dependent on how much revenue they make. And unfortunately, in some places, there's a lot more money, and that shouldn't impact the quality of education people get. And unfortunately, across the country, it does. So that's where we move policy to level that a bit, but also provide funds to make up for some of that, like the ARP, American Rescue Plan funds. $130 billion pre-K-12 schools, right? The goal there was to level the playing field. We know the pandemic hit us differently. We know urban communities, black and brown communities, the mortality rate, I don't have to tell you, it was worse. So the intent of these funds is to make sure that students who were impacted the most, communities that were impacted the most, get more of that fund to level the playing field. The pandemic made achievement and opportunity gaps worse. We know that. So these funds are there to level that out. And it's all of our job now to make sure that the funds are going to where they're supposed to be going.
Well, how did you come up, Miguel? How did you come up?
Yeah.
You're Secretary of Education now, but I heard you mention you were a teacher and a principal.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
how did you come up? What kind of education did you have?
Listen, I always say I was born rich, but I didn't have a lot of material possessions, right? Mm-hmm. I grew up in Meriden, Connecticut. My parents were really young. I was the first in my family to go to college. I remember, I got what the public schools gave me. I went to a technical high school. I studied automotive for 4 years. I was going to work on cars.
It's a good trade.
It is a good trade.
Great trade.
And I went to that school because my family, my older cousins went there. But I had a teacher that saw something in me and said, you know what, I was doing some artwork. I wanted to be an art teacher. She said, you use your art to talk about justice. Why don't you consider teaching? So I did. And, the rest is history. I was a teacher, fourth grade teacher, loved that job. I was a school principal. Mm-hmm. I was an assistant superintendent in my same hometown. And then the governor called and asked if I could lead the state. Yeah. And then, wow. I had no intention of leaving my home community. Mm-hmm. That's home, my family, my parents,
what were you doing as superintendent that made the governor call you to be like, I need this guy?
Being unapologetic about addressing achievement disparities that existed in Connecticut. Mm. And just being like, we got issues that we have to confront, and we have to be open and honest about it. And we can do that as educators, as leaders, lifting student voice, just focusing on those things that we know our kids need to improve. So that caught the attention of the governor. And then the pandemic hit. And in Connecticut, because I know students did need to be in schools, we worked really hard to make sure Connecticut schools opened right away and safely. And we were able to do that. We were hell-bent on making sure every child had access to technology. Because the computer is the new pencil, you know that.
Absolutely.
And broadband shouldn't be a luxury. Mm-hmm. So what we did was we provided broadband access devices in Connecticut, and we were able to do that quicker than many other states, which caught the attention of President Biden.
I was going to ask you, so how has it been that change?
Yeah.
From Connecticut, where, it's a community watching you, to now the world watching you. Now you have to have Secret Service. You have to, how has that change been for you?
At the end of the day, I'm the same kid from Meriden, Connecticut. I'm the same fourth grade teacher. I'm that same, those values have not changed. My stripes haven't changed. It's a bigger stage. Mm-hmm. There's more influence. Mm-hmm. There's more responsibility. The urgency is greater now. 50 million students, another 17 million in college. So for me, it's an honor, but I haven't changed who I am. The schedule changes a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. More cameras around. But the passion for equity, the passion for giving every child an opportunity to grow through public school is still there. And I'm a product of that. So for me, I know that public schools can do it.
How much did you learn in trade school when you was what can you do under the hood of a car?
Yeah, listen, I was proud. I changed a fuel pump of a Jeep and my wife's Jeep about a year ago. I was really proud of that, man. I got my hands dirty and everything. I showed her. I said, look, I still have it. Not really though. It's all technology now.
Yeah.
You have to know how to work a computer. Everything evolves. But I do say, I do take pride. I do take pride in the fact that I went to a technical high school.
No, I think trade school is something that we should be pushing more. I always tell kids they should go to trade school.
But what if trade schools are great? What if all comprehensive high schools had CTE pathways?
Absolutely.
Right? Career technical education pathways. I was at a technical college recently talking to students that were becoming electricians. They're going to be making good money. They all have jobs lined up. They have internships lined up, like no loans. They're going to do well. And all students across the country should have options in our comprehensive high schools too, not just those technical schools.
Okay, why hasn't debt cancellation happened?
Why hasn't the debt cancellation happened?
Yeah.
We've forgiven over $12.7 billion in debt. And since October, there was a $2.3 billion with the public service loan forgiveness, meaning teachers, nurses across the country have gotten emails saying, you no longer have debt. There was a person, a local person that I learned about last night, $70,000 in debt forgiveness. So in the 10 months that this administration has been here, $12.7 billion in debt forgiveness. That's unheard of. We're not done. Part of the issue is, and we're going to continue to find ways to provide loan forgiveness for those who are either taken advantage of by their schools. We heard of ITT, that college that shut down. I think 32% of their students were black students, and they just shut down. We forgave the debt for all those students. But we got to fix the problem. Public service loan forgiveness wasn't working. Borrower defense wasn't working. So we're stopping the pain while we're also trying to address those who have debt in a way that's meaningful to them. And we have done significant so far, but there's still work to do.
Do you think we'll ever get to a place where education will be free?
We were close with the framework, community college component of it. While it's not in there, we're not done fighting for it. But yes, it should be. The president set out a very aggressive agenda of 4 more years of school for free. And in the first year, not even the first year, half of that is done, right? Early childhood education, 3 and 4 year olds. I know you're parents. I'm a parent too. You know how important that foundation is, right? Absolutely. Pre-kindergarten. So we're halfway there. We're not done fighting. I want all students and all adults in the country to have access to community college so that they can get those skills that they need to get those jobs that pay more, so they can help their family, they can help their community. Yeah, we're fighting for that. We're not going to stop.
President Biden had pledged to forgive $10,000 in student loan debt per student, but that hasn't happened yet. Why not?
As I mentioned before, there is some loan forgiveness happening, pretty aggressive, more so than any other administration that I've known of. And those conversations continue. Again,
but his campaign trail promise.
Right. And it was, I'd sign off on Congress approving $10,000 across the board. And we're going to continue to keep students at the center of the conversation. And we have. I mean, it's not just rhetoric. Look at what we've done from day one. We're not even done with our first year and $12.7 billion. And we're going to continue to have conversations about how best to support our borrowers, especially those borrowers that were taken advantage of. Those borrowers that signed up for something were sold a bill of goods that never came. So many. 500,000 people received an email in October saying you're closer to loan forgiveness. Up to today, 37,000 of those people got an email saying you're done with your loans because of the public service. And I'm talking about teachers and nurses who signed up to serve public. And, you don't get into the profession of teaching because you want to make a lot of money. You do it because you want to help the community. Those are the folks that we're trying to support, too, through this public service loan forgiveness. So I'm really proud of the work we've done there. I'm really proud of the results that we're getting. I'm hearing stories of people, everyday people that get up every morning, grind, and like I said, those are the people that we want to make sure are getting supported, too, especially because in 2007, when this law was passed, the intent was there, but it was poorly administered. 98% of the people that applied for it before we got in, 98% of the people were denied. 98% of the people. And we've given out $2.3 billion since October.
So break this down for you, because I always find this interesting. You'll have politicians on the campaign trail, and they'll make these promises. The promises don't get fulfilled, but then, yourself and other members of the administration will tell us about all the other things that they did. Well, why don't they, if it's so easy to do all the other things, why not just do what they promised on the campaign trail?
You're talking about loan forgiveness. I mean, $12.7 billion in loan forgiveness has happened since January.
But $10,000 per student was the promise.
Right. So we're continuing to work on loan forgiveness. We're not done. As I said, we're not. I'm 9 months in, right? And we recognize the importance of making sure that our borrowers are not graduating with a lifetime of debt. We recognize that. I'm a first-gen college student myself, and I know that I had to make decisions, right? And thankfully, I got into administration. I was able to take care of all that. But for a lot of our graduates, we don't want them in debt for the rest of their lives where they can't buy a home. They can't contribute to the economy, so we recognize that. And if you look at our policies, it does show that we're lifting up those borrowers. We're student-centered at the agency, and then we're going to continue to do that. We've been pretty aggressive from day one, and we're not going to stop.
What about HBCUs?
Yes.
What's the support for HBCUs?
Where that money at, Miguel?
All right, listen, this is where it's at. This is where, first of all, HBCUs make up 3% of the colleges in our country, yet they graduate 20% of our black graduates. If that doesn't speak to the value of HBCUs, I went to several HBCUs and I heard from them saying, listen, we need fun. We don't have the endowment of some of the other places.
That some of these other colleges have. No.
They don't. But they're punching above their weight. So American Rescue Plan funds provided $4 billion for HBCUs to make sure that they stay whole, right? Because they don't have they don't have the billions sitting in coffers to deal with the pandemic. So the federal government, American Rescue Plan, put $4 billion for HBCUs to stay afloat. This past year, another $500 million in grants to HBCUs. This is real money. And in the Build Back Better agenda, this is why I think it's really important. People hear policy, this or that. We're talking real change. Another $500 million for HBCUs as well. So there's real money there. We're trying to elevate how important HBCUs are, but there is money behind that. And I want you to understand, I've talked to those presidents who said, listen, I don't have a STEM lab. I need some money to build a STEM lab so I can compete. I need money so that I could be a research one institution. I hear them, and we're making things happen.
Comparisons to the other schools, what are the other universities getting from the government opposed to the HBCUs? So across the board, the American Rescue Plan provided $40 billion for institutions of higher education. The reality is, many of these institutions have an endowment, but they have students that might be struggling. So of that $40 billion, half of that, $20 billion, have to go directly to students to keep them fed, transportation needs, housing needs. So half of that money has to go directly to the students. So that $40 billion was spread across all the schools, but HBCUs got a separate additional $4 billion.
Well, didn't President Biden pledge $45 billion?
He did. His proposal was really big. I thought it was $20 billion for HBCUs.
I thought it was 40. I think it was 45 between maybe, HBCUs and MSI.
Yeah. And I think some of it was capital, but
why did it get cut so drastically?
That's the hill, right? So we reckon, and I applaud the president for saying, no, we need to really up the ante here. We need to provide them funds to keep them flowing. Like I said, 20% of black graduates, and there are only 3% of our schools across the country. So the president recognizes the importance of HBCUs. The proposal was big. Right now, we're looking at, I believe it's $800 million that's being discussed with the framework, another $800 million. But listen, the goal is we're going to continue to lift up HBCUs. We know they punch above their weight. It's one of America's best stories, what they're doing. And not only are we going to be talking about it, but look at the policy. I ask folks, look at where the money is going. We are recognizing the importance of HBCUs through action.
Where are we getting all this money from? We talk about a lot of money you're giving away.
Right.
Where's this money coming from? Because they said, the U.S. is in debt. We owe other nations. Where are we getting this money from?
Bitcoin.
Scammers in Brooklyn, right? Where are we getting this money from?
So anyone making under $400,000 is not going to see a change in their federal tax structure. The goal is everyone pays their fair share. There are a lot of people that went from being billionaires to multi-billionaires in the last 2 years. People need to pay their fair share. So for people making under $400,000, they're not going to see a change in their federal tax rate. That's how this is. That's how this is being paid for. The reality is the folks that are going to be benefiting from this are not the ones that are going to be seeing a tax increase. It's for the folks that are making a lot of money, and power to them. I'm not hating on anyone that's making multi-billion dollars. Good for them, but pay your fair share so that people are not hungry down the street.
I think that's BS when it comes to a lot of it, because you say, You're a first-time college graduate.
Yep.
First time. I'm a first-time college attending graduate. First time my family to start making money, right? And I get taxed high, which I'm fine with. But I have a problem when you look at these big companies, right? Like your Amazon and these huge companies that get all these tax breaks and they make billions of dollars. But then you tell a guy that's making $401,000 in New York that they got to pay 50% of tax, and they look at Amazon and Amazon pays no tax and he makes 10, 20, 30 billion a year. That's a problem.
It is a problem, and we got a president now that's addressing it. We got a president now that's addressing it. That's
I don't believe you.
That's fine, but look at the data. People under 400,000 are not going to see a tax increase. That's why it's so challenging. That's why there's so many cuts in it. We have a president that's being bold about it, and people have to pay their fair share. That's the reality. Now, I hear what you're saying, but for somebody making under 400,000, for the folks that are listening right now who are like, listen, I don't make $400,000, they're not going to see an increase, but their children are going to have access to pre-kindergarten. They're going to be able to go back to school because Pell Grants are now going to be over $7,000.
No, I agree with you, but I just feel like a lot of those big companies they still fly under the radar, and that's a problem. Like you look at the past president, Donald Trump, and they say when he paid $200 in taxes. There's people that make less than $400,000 that pay more in taxes.
You get it.
And those are the problems, and that's back to schooling. That's back to
you get it, Envy. That's why people have to pay attention to what's going on. That's why this matters. This policies do matter. Who's in charge does matter. And I really feel strongly that we have a president now that's trying to hit it, like go at that. And it's not easy to go at that, but being open about saying everyone has to pay their fair share so that what you talked about earlier, zip code doesn't determine access to high quality education. It shouldn't be that way.
How much, I want to have a total number because, that's what people see. How much is this administration actually giving to HBCUs? What's the number?
So in the rescue plan, so that was passed for schools to reopen, there was $4 billion there.
Okay.
There's, I believe, 800, another $500 million in the Build Back Better framework. All right. So $500 million in the Build Back Better framework. So that's $500 million in this framework that we're hoping passes soon. This past year, $500 million in grants to HBCUs. All right, so that's so $500 million this year, another $500 million with this framework. You hear a lot about it in the news. They can't get it passed. We're close. That's $500 million for HBCUs. That's real money. All right, so there was money in the American Rescue Plan. I think it was $1.6 billion for HBCUs for their grants, their capital grants. Like we're looking out for them. And I'd be happy to send that information to you so you can share it with your listeners because this president, this administration is serious about it. And I know, the proposals are really high and it's getting, discussed or compromised at the Hill. But the intent is there and the action is there and we're not going to stop. And we're not even done with our first year. Name another time when HBCUs got this much. They need more. They need more support. But name another time where there's someone is bold to say we're gonna have real money going toward this American Rescue Plan Fund. It was huge for our communities, huge for our Black and brown communities where they don't have laptops, where they might not have access to school social workers. It's significant. I want to be real about that. It's helping communities that were going to fall further behind because of this pandemic.
How did you feel when you saw, the housing crisis that was happening at Howard University?
How did I feel about the
housing crisis there?
Did you see it?
I didn't see. No, I don't know specifically.
Students were complaining about not living in great sanitary conditions. So they were saying there was mold. They were saying that there was mice and bugs, and the students decided to pitch tents and to sleep outside.
And they protested.
Yes, out the facilities because they couldn't live in those kind of conditions.
So it's just weird when I hear about all this money going to HBCUs, but then I see, one of the top HBCUs in the country having those kind of problems, especially right there in the backyard in D.C.
I hear you. So what I will tell you is that the funds that are there are intended to not only support tuition and those things, but whatever needs the students have, including housing, including transportation, including access to food. So there are funds there, and it's really important that we make sure that our students, all students across the country, have access to a good facility where they could learn, where they could grow, a good school community. And, I'll tell you about my visit to Howard, though.
You didn't visit during that time.
I didn't visit during that time. I visited. Listen,
no.
but
Yeah.
listen, I went there, and you know what they were doing? Because we knew early on in the Black and brown community, there was a lot of hesitancy around vaccination.
Mm-hmm.
I was so impressed. I walked in there. They had their students, their medical students, their dental students in their white lab coats, talking to members of the community, making them feel comfortable. And they were hosting vaccine clinics for that community. Mm-hmm. So they were giving back to that community. There were students. I was really proud of what I saw there. And, it just reminds me of the importance of schools in their community. They're the hubs of the community. And Howard definitely stood up for the community. When
I was going to ask.
Real quick, that's one of the reasons, people find it hard to, trust elected officials because you'll go to the school, to push the vaccine, which is fine. But when they're in need of something like, better housing.
Yeah, better housing.
When they need that money,
Yeah.
y'all ain't in there trying to throw no dollars for those type of things.
No, I hear you. And I understand there's just general distrust, right? I mean, like I said, I was a fourth grade teacher. I was a student. And I always thought, government, what are they going to do? Well, I'm in that chair now.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's my job to change the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
It's my job to be in the community, to listen, to be real, and to be here and say, this is what we're doing with the money. We need this money for social workers in our schools. We need this money to make sure that parents have access to the schools in a real way. We need to make sure that teachers are in the classrooms that look like the students that live in those communities. That's what I'm trying to talk. That's what I'm talking about. And I'm coming from experience, man.
Mm-hmm.
I was the Latino teacher in my elementary school with so many students there that looked like me, that were looking like, wow, you're the only one that I have. Like, we need to do better. And I guess for me, it's really about controlling the narrative, making sure that we're sharing the good news of what is happening, realizing that there's a healthy skepticism around government. I get that.
Now, what about, they were saying they were trying to remove Black history from some of the curriculums.
Mm-hmm.
Now, since you said that you guys don't mandate the curriculums,
Yeah.
so what is the plan for that? Is
Right.
it state by state? Just, hey, you live in, I don't know, Arkansas, and you just take out Black history? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. As I said earlier, the federal government doesn't have a role. I don't have a role in that. But I'm an educator, a lifelong educator. I'm a father.
Mm-hmm.
I have 2 kids in high school. I want my kids to know about their experience too. I want all kids to learn about the true history of our country, warts and pimples and all, right? And the contributions of different people. That's what our schools should be doing. And that's what creates unity, really. I always say I sometimes I learn more about Black contributions through rap music. That's unacceptable. That's unacceptable.
Yeah, I just think
That's how you. I read that you learned English in public school.
I did.
Rap,
I learned Spanish.
Rap helped with that.
No, what I'm saying is like there was a song. I remember when I was in college. I was at Central Connecticut State University, and I had a Black professor in education who, she was awesome. And I remember listening to "You Must Learn" from KRS-One, and I ran to her. I said, "Look, listen. This is what we need to do." And I feel like, 25 years later, we still have work to do, man.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of work to do. So, yeah, I learned Spanish first, and then obviously in schools I learned English. But, for me, it's making sure that students see themselves. Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop talked about windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors. You ever heard that expression? What you learn in school should provide windows into other cultures. It should provide a mirror so you see yourself in your books. And sliding glass doors where you can adventure into other cultures and see how they live. That's what brings people together. That's what brings community. And our schools do that. Why do you think I wanted kids back in school? Schools are a sense of community. I know what Hampton was for you. It was a sense of community. Mm-hmm. That's what our schools provide, have done well. And I think, our states have an obligation to make sure that they're listening to what the students want to see, what the parents want to see. And I think it's a powerful thing when it's done well.
Secretary got to go too.
Yeah, I know you got to go. I got one last question. How can we ensure schools will remain open full time with the emergence of all these different variants?
Look, let me be really clear. We should not be closing schools. We know what to do to keep them safely open. When we close schools, some students hurt more than others. All right?
It's usually the Black and brown kids.
We cannot close schools. What we need to do is follow the science, vaccinate where we can vaccinate, provide communication with families, be open with our families, let them know what's going on, keep our community safe. Community spread dips into our schools. We have the tools, we have the resources, there's funding there. We need to have the will to make sure that we keep our students at the center of the conversation, and they're going to continue to achieve.
All right. Well, we appreciate you for joining us.
Yes.
Secretary Dr. Miguel Cardona.
Yes. Thank you.
Did you know Charlamagne's a doctor?
I am. Honorary
I
doctorate.
knew he was the God. I knew he was the God, not the doctor. I didn't know
I have an
that.
honorary doctorate from South Carolina State University.
Thank you, man.
He don't respect that.
No,
I respect that. Listen, he's an author. That's what I respect too. So
New
listen,
York Times bestselling.
I know you
Just want to throw
are.
that
I
out
know
there.
you are. Shook ones, but this is why we need to continue to work together. What you do for mental health awareness, we need. So let's continue to work together to get our students access
Absolutely.
the way they need it.
All
All right. Thanks for your time, guys.
Good morning. It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.